Keith Morris, who I like a lot, is absolutely right. It's messed up what's happening. It's messed up what we're seeing on the floor from the Washington Wizards. Prior to last night, when they came back from a 24-point deficit against the Clippers, by the way. I mean, they had lost 2 straight, lost to the Brooklyn Nets. And then I told folks in D.C. Lillard was coming to town to drop 40. And that's exactly what he did to the number, 40. And then last night, they show up and they're down 24 points, looking lackadaisical, lethargic, just completely apathetic and disinterested. He's right from the standpoint that it's messed up what's happening, okay? But he's inaccurate. It's not just one person. It's numerous people, Keith. And it's not just the players. It's a lot of people because what they've been witnessing from the Washington Wizards is unacceptable performances that have spanned years. Now, John Wall, let me say this about John Wall. John Wall is not a bad guy. John Wall is an all-star, a 5-time all-star. This guy could ball. Max Kellerman, you and I have sat on this very show talking about how John Wall deserves his money before he signed that $169 million, $170 million extension. So why did we say that? Because John Wall can play. What John Wall needs to understand is that nobody is saying you can't play. We're saying you haven't done what a franchise player is supposed to do. That's galvanize the troops, bring folks together, and lead this franchise. It ain't just about you going out there and averaging your money. You've got people in D.C., and remember what I said, Max, because obviously I went to D.C. to talk to John Wall, and he didn't want to have that conversation. I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to have that conversation with me either in the situation that he was in. Let's be clear about what I was going to say. I don't have any personal animus against John Wall. What do I care? I sleep well at night. I didn't sleep well last night, but I sleep well at night.
When you decide to go to sleep.
There we go. I'm perfectly fine. I've got nothing against John Wall. What I went to tell him was that there's a lot of people who do, and you have to pay attention to that. Why? Because I'm walking into Verizon Center in the nation's capital. That arena was half full. Ain't nobody walking through the turnstiles to see John Wall. They're looking at the Wizards, who have been a model of mediocrity or a tad bit better, because as far as I'm concerned, when you're 500 or a little above, but you're going home in the second round and nobody's thinking about you going any further, that's what you are. And then we got to go back to a couple of years ago. This is what I need people to understand. This latest stuff about John Wall, guys discussed it with him, feeling he don't want to share the ball enough. He's about his numbers. He's about potentially challenging for league MVP honors as opposed to prioritizing winning. This is the kind of things they're saying about him. I need everybody to understand this goes back about 3 years. 3 years ago, not the last 2 Scott Brooks coach. I'm talking about Randy Wittman. Randy Wittman, the year 2015, 2016, he's coaching the Washington Wizards. What happens? Randy Wittman is in practice, according to numerous sources that I've spoken to. He's in practice. He goes off with John. He goes off because he's getting on everybody like he always did. John Wall cusses at him, what have you. Randy Wittman cancels practice. He goes upstairs. He wants Ernie Grunfeld to find him. What does Ernie Grunfeld do? Nothing. John Wall knows about this. John Wall doesn't show up really to play for the rest of the season. I mean, he's not himself, okay? Because he's like, I'm the man. What happens with that? And he ends up getting hurt in the playoffs. They get bounced out of there. Randy Wittman doesn't get back. This year, what happens? It's stuff coming out about him with Scott Brooks. He did pretty much the same thing, except this time he was allowed to find John Wall. John Wall can play, but John Wall has to lead. And the bottom line is he has not been doing that. The Wizards have fragmented because of it. They showed out last night. He showed out last night and deserves credit for that. But what he needs to understand is that last night is supposed to be indicative of what you're supposed to be doing all the time, not just when the heat comes your way because negative publicity is coming your way.
First, real quick about John Wall. He used to be the best player in the East who wasn't on the Cleveland Cavaliers. The only players better than him in the East, really, were LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. Both better than him, Kyrie by a little bit. John Wall is a brilliant passer, was like the fastest guy in the league. And by the way, his three-point shots come along in the last couple of seasons. That's not the case anymore. I can think of a whole bunch of guys better than John Wall in the East right now, maybe better than John Wall ever was. The Greek Freak, Kawhi, Kyrie, who's no longer on the Cavs. I think a healthy Porzingis is more valuable than John Wall. Embiid, you could argue Simmons. Used to be when they would link up with Toronto. You'd say, why do you believe the Wizards will win this series? Because Kyle Lowry or John Wall. The best player on the floor is John Wall. That's not the case anymore. But I want to talk about Ernie Grunfeld, Stephen A., because I keep saying a year too early instead of a year too late. Trade him a year too early instead of a year too late. He waited a year too long. I love how they're putting it out there. We'll listen to anyone. We're open to the entire roster. We're willing to listen. Yeah, no kidding you're willing to listen. You think anyone's going to want to trade for John Wall in that contract right now? You waited too long. So I'm thinking, why? Why Ernie Grunfeld? Because once upon a time for the Knicks, Stephen A., he's the dude who pulled the trigger on a very unpopular trade at the time, trading Charles Oakley for Marcus Camby. Traded John Starks for Latrell Sprewell. Why didn't he trade these guys? By the way, he's the guy who drafted JaVale McGee and Nick Young. Like, he looks for talent. If there's a guy with an attitude, he looks for talent. Well, he's undervalued because of his attitude. Grunfeld's like, no. He's young, athletic. He's talented. I want him. Why did he stick with these guys? He believed in their talent. He drafted Otto Porter way too high. He paid him way too much. He overpaid for Wall, and it turns out he may have overpaid for Beal, although it's not a terrible contract. And what I'm saying is, this is the reason he waited too long is he believes in these guys. And to your point, the problem with this group wasn't only that the talent wasn't big enough, it wasn't good enough, it's they didn't get along from jump. This has been a problem in terms of chemistry now for 2 or 3 years.
You're absolutely right about the talent, which means that we have to look at my buddy who I've known for over 20 years, Ernie Grunfeld. The fact of the matter is that one could argue you shouldn't have got rid of Randy Wittman. Number two, you overpaid. You gave Mahimi more money as a backup than you gave Gortat, which served to alienate it. When John Wall MF'd Gortat last year, and Gortat basically said, to hell with it, I want out of here, last November,